Tonight, we're going to travel somewhere that most of humanity has never truly witnessed. Somewhere that exists in that tender space between what we think we know and what remains beautifully, mysteriously unknown. We're going to venture beyond the familiar glow of our sun, past the orbits of the planets you learned about as a child, into a place where the universe grows quieter, darker, and infinitely stranger. This is not a place of fear or urgency. It is, instead, a place of gentle vastness, of patient silence, and of wonders that have waited billions of years for someone to simply pause and listen to their stories. Before we begin this journey together, I want to invite you to get comfortable. If you haven't already, adjust your pillows, settle into that perfect position where your body feels supported and at ease. There's no rush. The universe has been waiting this long. It can wait a few more moments while you find your comfort. Close the door on the world outside, dim the lights if you'd like, and let your breathing slow naturally. We'll be moving very slowly through time and space tonight, so there's nowhere to hurry to, nothing to chase. You're simply here, listening, drifting, exploring. Now, imagine for a moment that you're standing in your backyard on a clear night, or perhaps you're lying on your back in a field, looking up at the stars. The darkness above is alive with tiny points of light, each one a sun like ours, each one surrounded by its own worlds and mysteries. The stars you see, Sirius, Vega, the familiar constellations of your childhood, they feel distant, don't they? Impossibly far away. But here's something that might gently shift the way you think about distance tonight. Everything you can see with your naked eye, every single star in the entire night sky that you've ever gazed upon, exists within just a few thousand light years of Earth. The night sky, in all its immensity, all its sparkling complexity, is actually just a small neighborhood in a vastly larger cosmos. And beyond that neighborhood, if you were to travel outward from your sun, past Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, there exists a place that belongs to your solar system, but is so incomprehensibly distant that light itself takes hours to reach it from the sun's center. This is the beginning of the story we're about to explore together. This is the threshold of the Kuiper Belt. Most of what you've learned about your solar system focuses on the 8 planets, or perhaps the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, that region where countless rocks orbit in a scattered cloud. But the Kuiper Belt is something different entirely. It is vaster than any asteroid field, more mysterious than any planetary system, and yet it remains almost entirely invisible from Earth, not because it's incredibly small, but because it's scattered across such enormous distances that even its largest objects appear as nothing more than faint blurs, even to our most powerful telescopes. And yet, this region is home to thousands upon thousands of objects, some as large as moons, some as large as worlds, all orbiting in a celestial dance that began before human consciousness first emerged on Earth. Let yourself settle deeper into this moment. Your breath is steady. Your body is relaxed. You're not going anywhere. You're simply here, present, ready to understand something that very few humans have taken the time to truly contemplate. What makes the Kuiper Belt so special, so worth our time and attention tonight, is not just its size or the objects it contains. What makes it special is what it reveals about the nature of our universe, about the architecture of solar systems, about the way gravity sculpts reality across unimaginable distances and spans of time. And there's something else, something quite beautiful that we'll discover together as we continue. The Kuiper Belt is not just a place out there, removed from our lives. In a very real sense, we exist because of the Kuiper Belt, the objects within it, the ices and rocks and ancient materials that float in that distant realm. They tell us the story of our own origin. They are like the preserved memories of our solar system's birth, fossils from a time when everything we know was still being formed, still being shaped by cosmic forces beyond imagination. So let's begin our journey now, together. We'll start close to home, in the familiar realm of the planets, and then very slowly, very gently, we'll travel outward, watching as the sun grows smaller behind us, watching as the planets recede, watching as we enter a realm where sunlight becomes something you have to imagine rather than see. We'll move at the pace of thought itself, with no urgency, no pressure to understand everything immediately. Understanding will come naturally, like learning a place by walking through it many times, becoming familiar with it not through memorization, but through presence. Between where Neptune orbits and where we'll eventually emerge from our sun's gravitational influence, there exists a region of profound quiet. It's not completely empty, the universe rarely is, but it's sparsely populated compared to the inner solar system. If you were to travel through this space, which would take you many decades, even at the fastest speeds our technology currently allows, you would see very little. Perhaps the occasional distant star, the fading warmth of the sun behind you, and an ever-deepening darkness ahead. This is the approach to the Kuiper Belt, the antechamber to one of the most fascinating regions in our entire solar system. The Kuiper Belt itself begins at a distance of about 30 astronomical units from the sun. An astronomical unit, or OE, is the distance from Earth to the sun, about 93 million miles, or 150 million kilometers. 30 times that distance. If your sun were the size of a grapefruit in your hand, Earth would be a grain of sand about 6 feet away from it. Neptune would be a peppercorn perhaps 40 feet distant. And the Kuiper Belt would begin around that distance, extending outward like ripples in an invisible pond, growing larger and thinner the farther you travel. The shape of the Kuiper Belt is something that might surprise you. Many people imagine it as a neat, orderly ring, similar to Saturn's rings, or perhaps as a disk like the asteroid belt. But the reality is much more chaotic, much more organic. The Kuiper Belt is a scattered, three-dimensional distribution of objects. Some orbit nearly in the same plane as the planets, but others have tilted orbits, approaching from above or below the ecliptic plane. Some have nearly circular orbits, while others follow paths that are wildly elliptical, bringing them very close to the sun in some eons, and then hurling them far beyond where we can see in others. It is beautiful in its disorder, meaningful in its apparent chaos. And as we prepare to explore this region more deeply, I want you to notice something about your own state of mind. Are you still with me? Is your breathing still easy and relaxed? Good, because what comes next requires no effort from you at all. No struggle. Just gentle attention, drifting awareness, the kind of consciousness you have when you're falling asleep, but still aware of the world around you. This is exactly where we need to be. Let's think about distance for a moment, because distance is the first mystery we must solve to understand the Kuiper Belt. Distance is so fundamental to everything we're about to explore, and yet it's also something that our human minds struggle to truly grasp. We can understand a mile. We can understand 100 miles. Most of us have driven or flown across distances like that. But what about 1,000 miles? What about 1,000,000 miles? What about distances so vast that light, the fastest thing we know of, traveling at 186,000 miles per second, takes hours to cover them? This is where the Kuiper Belt begins to feel less like a place and more like an idea, a philosophical concept as much as a physical location. The objects within it are so far apart that even if you somehow managed to travel to one, you would see nothing but darkness around you, stars in every direction, and the faint glow of the sun somewhere behind you, no brighter than the brightest star in Earth's night sky. Alone, in that vast emptiness, you would finally begin to understand what scale truly means. Yet humans have discovered hundreds of objects in the Kuiper Belt. We know of their orbits. We know of their composition, their sizes, their characteristics. And this feat of discovery, this achievement of understanding something so distant and so dark, is itself one of the great stories of human curiosity and ingenuity. But that's for another moment. For now, simply rest with the idea. Out beyond Neptune, in a region that receives barely a whisper of the sun's warmth, there exists a population of worlds. Thousands of them, waiting, silent, eternal. Your eyelids might be growing heavy now. That's perfect. Let them grow heavy. There's no need to resist it. The universe is patient. It will still be here if you close your eyes. In fact, closing your eyes might help you see the Kuiper Belt more clearly, because what we're exploring tonight lives as much in imagination and wonder as it does in physical reality. Close your eyes if you'd like. Continue listening. Let the words wash over you like waves on a shore you can't see. And know that you're safe here, held by the vastness of the cosmos, carried on a journey that has unfolded exactly as it needed to for you to be here, listening at this precise moment in time. Imagine now that we've traveled beyond Neptune, that we're moving outward at a pace that would take a spacecraft many years to cover, but which in our story happens instantaneously as thought itself. You're drifting, weightless, in a spacesuit that requires no movement from you, sustained by curiosity alone. The sun behind you is no longer the dominant feature of the sky. It's still visible, still warmer than the ambient cold of deep space, but it's become one light among many, just another star in a vast universe of stars. Your eyes are adjusting to this new darkness. You're beginning to notice details you couldn't see before. The first thing you might observe is that this region of space is not empty. Every direction you look, there are objects. Not crowded space remains fundamentally empty, with vast gulfs between things, but present. Here, an icy body the size of a small moon tumbles slowly through the darkness, its surface scarred by billions of years of cosmic collisions. There, a smaller chunk of rock and ice drifts silently, no larger than a mountain, yet perfectly capable of existing here in this cold realm without requirement or need. And elsewhere, scattered across billions of miles, are countless other objects, each one a world unto itself, each one a story that predates human civilization by billions of years. The Kuiper Belt, if you were to map it, would appear as something like a thickened disk or a donut, with a hole in the middle where the inner planets orbit safely around the sun. The belt extends from about 30 astronomical units from the sun, where the planets end, outward to about 50 or 55 astronomical units, where it begins to fade into the more distant and even more sparsely populated Oort cloud. Some definitions extend the Kuiper Belt even farther, to perhaps 100 astronomical units, but in our story, we'll focus on the densest, most populated region, the area where objects are most likely to be found, where the story of this region is most concentrated and compelling. 50 astronomical units. Let that number settle into your mind for a moment. It's 30 times farther from the sun than Earth is, but for the Kuiper Belt, it's only the beginning of a region that could extend much farther still. The largest known object in the Kuiper Belt, and one of the most fascinating discoveries in modern astronomy, is a dwarf planet called Eris. Eris is fascinating not because it's the farthest thing from the sun. It's not, but because it's one of the largest objects in the Kuiper Belt, and because its discovery, along with the discovery of other objects of similar size, fundamentally changed our understanding of what the outer solar system contains. Eris is about 96% the diameter of our moon. If you were to stand on Eris's surface, which is covered in frozen methane, nitrogen, and other ices, you would feel almost no gravity. You could jump off a small cliff and find yourself floating for hours before slowly falling back down. The sun, from Eris's perspective, would appear as nothing more than an extremely bright star, no larger in the sky than Venus appears from Earth. You might never suspect, looking at that distant point of light, that it was a star with 8 planets orbiting it, that it was the center of an entire solar system. But Eris knows the sun's gravity. It follows an orbit determined by that distant star, taking 257 Earth years to complete one full revolution around it. 257 years. When Eris was last at its closest approach to the sun, it was somewhere in the distant past, long before human writing was invented, long before the first civilizations emerged on Earth. By the time it reaches that point again, many human lifetimes will have passed. Civilizations will have risen and fallen. Technologies we can barely imagine will have been invented and perhaps become obsolete. And Eris will have completed only a small fraction of its journey through space. But Eris is just one object, one story, one world among thousands. The Kuiper Belt contains an estimated 100,000 objects larger than 100 kilometers in diameter. 100 kilometers is roughly the width of New York City. Imagine objects the size of a city, all orbiting the sun in this distant region, and these are just the large ones. There are probably millions of objects in the Kuiper Belt, if you count everything down to the size of small mountains or hills. And all of these objects exist in a region so vast that if you stood on one, you could look in every direction and see nothing but darkness and stars. You might never know that there was another object of any size within 100 million kilometers of you. Your mind is drifting now, isn't it? Let it drift. This is the right state of consciousness for understanding the Kuiper Belt. We're not looking for sharp, focused clarity here. We're looking for that soft, flowing awareness where ideas move like clouds through your consciousness, overlapping, merging, creating new patterns without demanding that you hold on to them rigidly. Now, I want to introduce you to another major object in the Kuiper Belt, one that you might already know by name, Pluto. Pluto was discovered in 1930, and for 76 years, it was considered the 9th planet of our solar system. It was included in every textbook, every illustration of the solar system. Pluto had a place of honor in our understanding of our own cosmic neighborhood. And then, in the year 2006, something changed. Astronomers discovered other objects in the Kuiper Belt that were similar in size to Pluto, or even larger. The definition of what constitutes a planet was refined, made more precise, and Pluto no longer fit that definition. This reclassification was, in some ways, a small thing, a matter of terminology and classification. But in another way, it was profound. It represented humanity's growing understanding of the true structure of the solar system. The solar system, it turned out, was not a tidy collection of planets and then empty space. It was instead a complex populated realm with many worlds, many objects, many stories. Pluto was still there, still following its orbit, still beautiful in its own way. But now it was understood in a new context, as the first among many Kuiper Belt objects that had been discovered, rather than as the lonely, distant 9th planet. Pluto is about 2,300 kilometers in diameter, less than a quarter the diameter of Earth. If you could somehow travel to Pluto and stand on its surface, which is covered in frozen nitrogen, methane, and water ice, you would find yourself in a landscape of incomparable strangeness. Towering mountains of water ice rise around you, mountains as hard and solid as rock at Pluto's frigid temperature. Valleys wind between them. Vast plains of nitrogen ice stretch toward the horizon. And across all of this, shadows pool in the deepest valleys. Shadows that have not seen sunlight in millions of years, that have been undisturbed since the formation of the Kuiper Belt itself. But we're not here to stay on Pluto. We're here to understand the broader region, to grasp the scale of the Kuiper Belt, to begin to feel the vastness in your bones the way a person begins to feel the weight of the ocean when they dive deep enough. So let's move outward again, leaving Pluto behind, drifting further, traveling deeper into the Kuiper Belt's populated regions. As we move outward, you begin to notice something subtle happening to the space around you. Objects are becoming slightly more sparse. The density of the Kuiper Belt decreases as you travel farther from the sun. This makes sense, in a way. The sun's gravity, though weak at these distances, is still exerting influence, still shaping orbits, still determining which objects can sustain stable paths, and which will eventually be ejected into interstellar space or dragged into closer orbits. The regions closer to 30 astronomical units are more densely populated than those farther out, though the difference is gradual and smooth, not sharp and sudden. And here's where something truly mysterious begins to reveal itself. We don't actually know why the Kuiper Belt has the structure it does. We don't fully understand what determines the distribution of objects, what caused some regions to be more densely packed than others. There are theories, good ones, reasonable ones, based on everything we understand about planetary formation and orbital mechanics. There are models that suggest the Kuiper Belt was shaped by planetary migration, by gravitational interactions that occurred in the first few 100 million years of the solar system's history. But certainty remains elusive. The Kuiper Belt continues to be a mystery, a region where our knowledge has edges, where the unknown still dwells. This is comforting in a way, isn't it? It's comforting to know that there are still mysteries, still regions that humanity hasn't completely figured out, still questions that remain unanswered despite all our technology and cleverness. The Kuiper Belt is one such region. It's a place where wonder can still live, where the universe can still surprise us, where new discoveries are constantly being made. Every few years, astronomers discover new objects in the Kuiper Belt, objects that expand our understanding, that challenge our assumptions, that remind us of how much remains to be learned. Let your thoughts settle around this idea. The universe is vast. It's older than human comprehension. It contains mysteries that we may never fully solve. And yet, we persist in trying to understand it, to map it, to feel our way toward knowledge like someone in a darkened room, learning the layout of furniture by touch and careful movement. This impulse, this desire to understand, is fundamentally human. And in this moment, you're participating in that ancient impulse, learning about the Kuiper Belt, expanding your understanding of your place in the cosmos. Your breathing might be very slow now. Your body might feel heavy, comfortably heavy, held by the pull of gravity and the weight of relaxation. Let these feelings deepen. There's no resistance needed. The Kuiper Belt will be here tomorrow, next week, next year. It will be here for billions of years. The universe is in no hurry, and neither are you. As we continue our drift outward through the Kuiper Belt, I want you to imagine something. Imagine that you could somehow sense the presence of all the objects around you, that you had a perception that allowed you to know where each icy world floated in the darkness, even though your eyes couldn't quite see them. In this enhanced perception, the Kuiper Belt wouldn't appear empty at all. It would appear as a vast, three-dimensional population, like a city seen from far above at night, lights scattered across an enormous landscape, each light a world, each world a story. But you can't actually see these lights, can you? The objects of the Kuiper Belt generate no light of their own. They don't have the internal heat and pressure that makes a star glow. They're cold, profoundly, utterly cold. The temperature on the surface of these worlds is measured in tens of degrees above absolute zero. Absolute zero is the coldest temperature possible, the point where all molecular motion ceases, where atoms stop vibrating, where energy itself seems to condense into pure potential. Kuiper Belt objects are nowhere near that cold, but they're close. Close enough that if you could place your hand on one, it would instantly become rigid, instantly freeze solid, instantly join the icy matrix of that world. One of the most remarkable features of the Kuiper Belt is its composition. The objects here are made primarily of water ice, methane ice, nitrogen ice, ammonia ice, and many others. These ices are mixed with rock and dust, creating a kind of cosmic compost, a mixture of the oldest materials in the solar system, preserved in this cold outer region for billions of years. The ices you find here are the same ices that existed during the formation of the solar system, when everything was younger, when the sun was dimmer, when the entire solar system was a chaotic cloud of gas and dust and accreting bodies colliding and merging and forming planets. When an object from the Kuiper Belt is nudged by gravity, either from passing stars or from gravitational interactions with other objects, and begins to drift inward toward the sun, something remarkable happens. As it approaches closer to the sun's heat, the ices begin to sublimate, to transform directly from solid to gas, without passing through a liquid state. Water ice becomes water vapor. methane ice becomes methane gas. These gases expand outward from the object, carrying dust and small particles with them, and create what we see from Earth as a comet's tail, a beautiful, ghostly wisp of light that streaks across the night sky. Comets have fascinated humanity for millennia. Ancient peoples saw them as omens, as messages from the gods, as harbingers of change or catastrophe. But now we understand what they truly are. Visitors from the Kuiper Belt, ancient icy objects that have fallen inward toward the sun and are giving us a glimpse of what lies in that distant realm. Every comet you've ever heard about, Halley's Comet, which returns every 76 years, the Hale-Bopp Comet, the great comet of the 18th century. These are Kuiper Belt objects, Kuiper Belt stories, told in the language of light and vapor and ice. And here's something that softly connects this distant realm to your own life. Some of the water in your body, some of the complex organic molecules that make up your cells, may have originated in the Kuiper Belt. These icy worlds hold organic compounds, the building blocks of life as we understand it. When they're brought closer to the sun by gravitational disturbances, when they potentially collide with planets, they deliver these precious chemicals to worlds where they might eventually become part of living organisms. You are, in a very real sense, connected to the Kuiper Belt. The same atoms that float in that distant region have flowed through countless organisms, through countless transformations, and have eventually found their way into you. This is not poetry, though it sounds like poetry. This is literal fact. The carbon in your body came from exploded stars. The water in your cells came from icy bodies in the Kuiper Belt, or from water-bearing asteroids that struck the early Earth. The calcium in your bones came from stellar nucleosynthesis billions of years before the sun was born. You are not separate from the cosmos. You are the cosmos. You are the universe experiencing itself through the lens of human consciousness. Let this idea settle into you. Feel its truth. As you relax, as your breathing deepens, as your body becomes heavier and more comfortable, know that you are breathing out atoms that have existed for billions of years. You are breathing in atoms that might have come from the Kuiper Belt, that might have circulated through countless other beings. You are not an isolated phenomenon. You are an expression of universal principles, a temporary arrangement of atoms and energy that will eventually disperse and reform into new arrangements, new expressions, new experiences. In the Kuiper Belt, this process of eternal transformation happens very slowly. A Kuiper Belt object might remain essentially unchanged for billions of years. But change will eventually come. Stars will pass near it, gravitational currents will shift, and it will be nudged toward a new orbit. Or it might collide with another object, and the collision might be violent enough to send fragments scattering in new directions, creating smaller objects that will follow their own paths through space and time. Nothing in the universe is truly static. Everything is in motion. Everything is changing. Everything is participating in a grand process of transformation that has been ongoing since the universe itself came into being. Now, let's explore some of the specific objects that populate the Kuiper Belt, the worlds that have been discovered and studied, the places that have names and personalities and stories. Beyond Pluto, as we continue drifting outward, we encounter objects like Haumea, which is unusual because it's spinning rapidly, completing a rotation roughly every 4 hours. This rapid spin has caused Haumea to elongate, to become egg-shaped rather than spherical. Imagine a world spinning so fast that its own shape is distorted by centrifugal force. A world that looks like a cosmic egg tumbling through the darkness at an incredible rate. On Haumea's surface, if you were somehow able to stand on one of the poles, you would feel less gravitational pull toward the ground than you would on Pluto, even though they're similar in mass. The rapid spin is trying to fling you outward, trying to overcome the planet's gravity. Haumea also has something distinctive about it: rings. Yes, like Saturn, like Jupiter, like Uranus and Neptune, Haumea has rings made of dust and ice particles orbiting around it. It's a miniature planetary system, a small world with its own tiny worlds orbiting around it. We're still discovering the details of Haumea's rings, still learning about this strange, distant world. And each new piece of information deepens the mystery, creates new questions, reveals new facets of this icy egg-shaped world's character. There's also Makemake, another dwarf planet in the Kuiper Belt, distinguished by being one of the brightest objects there. Its surface is covered in frozen methane and nitrogen, and these frozen materials reflect sunlight efficiently, making Makemake visible even from Earth through powerful telescopes, even though it's billions of kilometers away. Makemake has its own moons, smaller worlds orbiting it, and together they form a tiny family in the darkness, bound together by gravity, dancing in synchronized orbits that have been stable for billions of years and will likely remain stable for billions more. As you listen to these names, Haumea, Makemake, Eris, Pluto, let them become familiar to you. These are the major characters in the Kuiper Belt, the largest objects, the most prominent features of this distant realm. But they're not alone. There are thousands of others, each with its own orbit, its own characteristics, its own slow journey through the darkness. Some of these objects have moons, tiny Kuiper Belt objects, orbiting larger Kuiper Belt objects, creating nested systems of gravity and orbital mechanics. Some orbit alone, but all of them are together in that distant place, that cold realm beyond the planets, that frontier of the solar system, where the sun's influence begins to fade and the galaxy's gravity begins to assert itself more strongly. Let your eyes close now, if they haven't already. The image of these icy worlds, these distant and cold and ancient places, can be better imagined in darkness. See them in your mind. Feel their cold. Experience their vastness. Know that they're there, billions of kilometers away, orbiting in silence, unchanged since humans first looked at the night sky and wondered about the universe. Before we continue further outward, it's important to understand how the Kuiper Belt came into existence in the first place. To understand this, we need to journey backward in time to a period so ancient that the sun was barely beginning to form, when the solar system was just a cloud of gas and dust and rocky material contracting under its own gravity. This was 4.5 billion years ago, long before life emerged on Earth, long before dinosaurs walked the planet, long before humans left Africa and spread across the world. In those early days, the solar system looked nothing like it does today. There were no planets yet, just a disk of material orbiting a young, hot sun. Within this disk, material was aggregating, clumping together through gravity and collision, gradually forming larger and larger objects. In the regions close to the sun, where it was hot, only rocky materials and metal could exist as solids. Water and methane and nitrogen remained as gases, blown outward by the sun's solar wind. But farther out, where it was colder, these gases could condense into ices, and these ices could combine with rock to form larger objects. The region where the Kuiper Belt is today, starting around 30 astronomical units from the sun, was in this cold zone. Here, objects could form and grow, aggregating more and more material as they orbited through the early solar system. Some of these objects grew very large, eventually becoming the gas giants and ice giants that we know today. Jupiter and Saturn, the massive gas giants, formed in the inner solar system, but they were very close to each other. Uranus and Neptune, the ice giants, formed farther out in the region where the Kuiper Belt is today. But something remarkable happened when these 4 giant planets formed. The gravity of these massive worlds was so strong that it began to reshape the entire solar system. In a process that scientists call the grand tack, or planetary migration, the planets began to move. Jupiter and Saturn, formed close together, began a dance that would eventually carry them to different orbits. Uranus and Neptune, formed farther out, were scattered outward by gravitational interactions. As this planetary migration occurred, the planets swept through regions of space that were filled with small objects, and their gravity flung many of these objects outward into more distant orbits. This is the origin story of the Kuiper Belt as we understand it today. The objects that now populate the Kuiper Belt are, in some sense, the scattered remnants of a larger population of icy bodies that formed even farther out in a region called the primordial disk. When the planets migrated, they disrupted this primordial disk, scattering its population in all directions. Some objects were ejected from the solar system entirely, sent flying out into interstellar space, never to return. Some were scattered inward, eventually becoming comets that would periodically fall toward the sun. And some remained in the region between 30 and 50 astronomical units, where we observe the Kuiper Belt today. This process was violent. It was chaotic. Objects collided with each other at high speeds, fragmenting into smaller pieces. Gravitational interactions between the planets and these small objects created new orbits, new trajectories, new fates. The entire architecture of the outer solar system was being reshaped on a timescale of millions of years. Can you imagine the violence of this? The energy involved? The incomprehensible scale of the collisions and interactions? Yet from this chaos emerged the solar system as we know it today. The planets eventually settled into stable orbits. The intense period of migration ended. The bombardment of small objects striking the inner planets gradually diminished, and what had once been a chaotic, violent realm became more stable, more settled, more patient. The Kuiper Belt, in its current form, is the result of this ancient catastrophe. It is, in a sense, a memorial to that violent birth of the solar system, a region that preserves objects from that era in much the same way that geological layers preserve fossils from Earth's deep past. This is profound when you think about it. The Kuiper Belt is not just a collection of icy objects. It's a time capsule. It's a window into the past of the solar system itself. These objects have been relatively unchanged since the time of planetary migration. They've been preserved in the cold of deep space, their surfaces scarred by billions of years of cosmic rays and micrometeorite impacts, but their basic composition, their fundamental nature, remaining much as it was when they formed. Imagine now that you're traveling backward through time, falling through the past, moving toward that ancient era 4.5 billion years ago. The Kuiper Belt that you're seeing changes. It becomes more chaotic, more violent, more dynamic. Objects that have long since settled into stable orbits are still being scattered by planetary gravity. New objects are still being created by collisions between larger bodies. The entire region is alive with motion and energy and transformation. And as you continue falling backward, the entire solar system transforms. The planets are in different positions. The sun is dimmer, younger. And eventually, if you could fall back far enough, you would reach the moment before the planets existed at all, when there was just a disk of gas and dust and the forming sun at its center. But we're not going to stay in that ancient past. We're going to return to the present moment, to the Kuiper Belt as it exists now in this current era. And as we return, I want you to feel the deep time involved in this transition. Billions of years have passed. The chaos of the early solar system has settled into the stable rhythm of orbital mechanics. The planets have completed billions of orbits around the sun. Countless comets have been launched from the Kuiper Belt toward the inner solar system and the sun. And yet, the Kuiper Belt remains. It persists. It endures. This endurance is remarkable. In a universe where everything eventually breaks down, everything eventually decays, the Kuiper Belt represents a kind of stability, a kind of permanence. Not absolute. Of course, stars will eventually burn out. The universe will eventually reach thermal equilibrium. Everything will eventually disperse into heat death. But on human timescales, even on geological timescales, even on the timescales of the universe itself, billions of years, the Kuiper Belt is steady. It is reliable. It is an anchor point in an eternally changing cosmos. Feel this now. Feel the stability of the Kuiper Belt, underlying everything else you understand about the universe. Feel the deep time that separates the formation of the Kuiper Belt from this present moment. Feel the billions of years that have passed, the countless changes that have occurred to Earth and humanity and the entire solar system, while the Kuiper Belt remains, cold and patient, orbiting as it has always orbited. Your consciousness might feel strange right now. You might feel very small, very fragile, very temporary. This is not a negative feeling, though it might seem that way at first. This is the feeling of perspective. This is what happens when you truly contemplate your place in the cosmos, when you allow the scale of the universe to penetrate your awareness. You are small, yes. You are temporary, yes. But you are also part of this vast universe, connected to it, made from it. Your atoms have existed as long as the Kuiper Belt's atoms. Your consciousness is an expression of the same laws that govern the orbits of distant icy worlds. Let's shift our attention now to something that might seem less dramatic than planetary migration and cosmic violence, but which is, in its own way, equally fascinating. Let's think about the quiet lives of the objects in the Kuiper Belt, about their orbits, about the way they move through space day after day, year after year, orbit after orbit, for billions of years. Each object in the Kuiper Belt is in orbit around the Sun. Each object follows a path that was determined by the circumstances of its formation and the gravitational interactions it has experienced throughout its history. Some of these orbits are nearly circular, making their trajectories predictable and stable. Other orbits are more eccentric, meaning they're elongated, with the object coming very close to the Sun at one point in its orbit, and then traveling far away at another point. And these orbits are not all aligned in the same plane. Some objects orbit in the plane of the solar system, the ecliptic, the same plane in which the planets orbit. Others have tilted orbits, approaching from above or below this plane, creating a true three-dimensional structure to the Kuiper Belt rather than a flat disk. This three-dimensional structure is important because it tells us something about the history of the Kuiper Belt. If the Kuiper Belt had remained undisturbed since its formation, we would expect most objects to orbit in the same plane, the way the planets do. But the tilted orbits suggest gravitational interactions, scattering events, perturbations that have knocked objects out of the original plane. These tilted orbits are evidence of the violence of the past, of the chaos that existed when the Kuiper Belt was being shaped by migrating planets. Now, imagine for a moment that you're standing on one of the larger Kuiper Belt objects, let's say on Pluto, looking outward into the darkness. The Sun is a bright star in your sky, brighter than Venus as seen from Earth, but still recognizably just a point of light, not a disk like we see it from Earth. You're standing on a surface of frozen nitrogen and methane and water ice, your feet firmly on the ground, held there by Pluto's weak gravity. Around you, in the darkness, are other objects, but they're so far away that even if your eyes were incredibly sharp, you might not be able to see them. You're alone, effectively, in a vast darkness, your world orbiting around that distant star you can see in the sky. Over the course of 257 Earth years, as Pluto completes one full orbit around the Sun, you would see the Sun's position change in your sky. You would experience the seasons on your world, if you can call them seasons, since they last decades, and you would gradually return to the position from which you began, and then you would begin the journey again. This is the quiet rhythm of the Kuiper Belt, the slow dance that these objects perform with the Sun and with each other. But these objects are not completely alone, even though they might appear to be. Many Kuiper Belt objects have moons, smaller objects that orbit around them, the way our moon orbits Earth. Pluto, for instance, has 5 known moons. The largest of these, Charon, is so massive that it and Pluto actually orbit around a point in space between them. Rather than Charon orbiting Pluto, they're more like a binary system, 2 worlds locked in a gravitational embrace, orbiting their common center of mass. Eris also has a moon, as do Makemake and Haumea and many of the other larger Kuiper Belt objects. These moon systems within the Kuiper Belt are thought to have been created by collisions. In the early days of the Kuiper Belt, objects were more densely packed together than they are today, and collisions between objects were more frequent. When two objects collided, they would sometimes shatter into fragments, and some of these fragments would remain bound to the larger object by gravity, becoming moons. This is how we think many of the moons in the Kuiper Belt were born not from the condensation of gas and dust around a central object, but from catastrophic collisions between objects. Each of these systems, each Kuiper Belt object with its moons, is its own little gravitational family, locked together by the force that governs all motion in the universe. The gravity holding Charon in orbit around Pluto, and Pluto is the same gravity that holds the moon in orbit around Earth, the same gravity that holds planets in orbit around the sun, the same gravity that holds galaxies together. It is one force acting across all scales, creating order and structure from the apparent chaos of the universe. Let your mind follow these orbits for a moment. Follow the path of Pluto as it makes its slow journey around the sun. Follow Charon as it orbits the center of mass between it and Pluto, creating a little dance, a little waltz between two worlds. Follow Pluto's other moons, Nix, Hydra, Kerberos, Styx, each orbiting in their own pattern, each contributing to the gravitational environment around Pluto. Now, expand this vision to include all the other Kuiper Belt objects, all their moons, all their orbits, all their gravitational interactions. Picture the vast three-dimensional web of gravity that underlies everything, that determines where everything is going, that has determined where everything has been. This is the hidden architecture of the Kuiper Belt, the deep structure that underlies the apparent emptiness and chaos. This is what remains when all the light and heat and commotion are stripped away, just the quiet geometry of gravity and orbit and motion. There's something almost meditative about contemplating this, isn't there? The order underlying everything. The predictability of orbits that stretch across billions of kilometers and billions of years. The fact that an astronomer on Earth, using a telescope and a few calculations, can determine where a Kuiper Belt object will be 100 years from now, or 1,000 years from now. The fact that the same laws that govern falling apples and rolling balls govern the movement of worlds at distances so vast that light takes hours to cross them. In our modern world, we're often surrounded by change and chaos and unpredictability. News comes rapidly. Social media creates a sense of constant novelty and surprise. Technology evolves quickly, but out in the Kuiper Belt, none of this exists. There is no change. There is no news. There is only the slow, patient, eternal rhythm of orbital motion, the same rhythm it has been for billions of years, the same rhythm it will likely be for billions of years into the future. Allow yourself to feel the peace in this. Allow your mind to synchronize with the rhythm of the Kuiper Belt, orbiting slowly around the distant sun, moving through space at a velocity that would take weeks to cross even a single astronomical unit, yet still maintaining perfect orbits, perfect paths, perfect stability. Your thoughts can move at this pace. Your breathing can follow this rhythm. You are, in this moment, in harmony with the universe. You are orbiting together with the Kuiper Belt, all of you held in the same gravity, all of you moving together through the darkness. As we travel deeper into our exploration of the Kuiper Belt, we must now approach something that might seem strange in a sleep story. Uncertainty, mystery, places where our knowledge ends and speculation begins. But these mysteries are not frightening. They are, instead, gentle and humble reminders that the universe is larger than our understanding, that there are still places to explore, still questions to answer, still wonders waiting to be discovered. The Kuiper Belt is, in many ways, a frontier of human knowledge. We have never sent a spacecraft to explore it directly. We have only seen it through the lens of telescopes, detected the light of the sun bouncing off distant objects, analyzed the motions of these objects to infer their masses and sizes and orbital characteristics. Everything we know about the Kuiper Belt comes from observing it from Earth, or from the inner solar system, from a distance of billions of kilometers. It's like trying to understand an entire continent by looking at it through a very small window from very far away. We can see some details, but much remains hidden. One of the great mysteries is the composition of individual Kuiper Belt objects. We know that they're primarily made of ices and rock, but the exact proportions vary from object to object. Some are probably more icy, while others might be more rocky. Some might have layers, with different compositions at different depths. We understand the general composition through spectroscopy, analyzing the light that reflects from these objects to determine what elements are present, but detailed knowledge of any specific object is extremely limited. Another mystery concerns the number of Kuiper Belt objects. We've discovered hundreds of them, but our estimates suggest there are many thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands in total, yet we haven't found them all. New discoveries are made regularly, and there's always a nagging question. Could there be something large, something the size of Earth, or a small planet, something we haven't discovered yet, hiding in the Kuiper Belt? Probably not. The region has been surveyed thoroughly enough that we would likely have detected such an object. But we cannot be absolutely certain. Then there's the question of the very edge of the Kuiper Belt. Where does it truly end? The boundary is not sharp. As you travel outward, objects become gradually more sparse, the density decreasing smoothly rather than stopping suddenly. At some point, the Kuiper Belt transitions into something else, either the Oort cloud, a much more distant and sparse spherical cloud of objects surrounding the solar system, or simply the interstellar medium, the space between stars. But where exactly that transition occurs remains somewhat unclear. There's also the mystery of the Kuiper Belt's future. How long will the Kuiper Belt persist in its current form? Will objects continue to be ejected from it over billions of years, gradually depleting its population? Will passing stars eventually disrupt it, scattering its contents in all directions? Will the Kuiper Belt eventually become even more diffuse than it is today? Or might it eventually grow as new objects are created through collisions? The very long-term fate of the Kuiper Belt is something we cannot predict with certainty. And perhaps most tantalizingly, there's the question of whether any of the objects in the Kuiper Belt harbor life, or the possibility of life. We know that icy bodies can contain organic compounds. We know that if the right conditions existed as a source of energy, liquid water, some way for chemical reactions to occur, life might be possible. But we don't know if any Kuiper Belt object has these conditions. We haven't been close enough to look. This last question is perhaps the most profound. As you drift through the Kuiper Belt in your imagination, as you contemplate these distant, cold worlds orbiting in darkness, you might wonder, could there be consciousness somewhere out there? Could some forms of life, unimaginably alien, unimaginably different from anything on Earth, exist in the depths of these icy worlds? We don't know. And that unknowing, that possibility, is beautiful. It reminds us that we live in a universe that is not completely knowable, that is larger than our understanding, that contains mysteries we may never solve. This is not a cause for despair. It is, instead, a cause for wonder. It is the source of the human impulse to explore, to ask questions, to push the boundaries of knowledge. As long as mysteries exist, there is meaning in the pursuit of understanding them. Let these mysteries settle into your mind as you drift deeper toward sleep. You don't need to solve them. You don't need to understand them completely. They exist out there in the Kuiper Belt and beyond, waiting, patient, eternal. And that's enough. That's more than enough. The universe has provided us with enough mysteries to last 1,000 lifetimes, enough questions to occupy countless generations. And you, in this moment, are connected to all of those who have asked these questions before you, and to all of those who will ask them in the future. You are part of a great chain of conscious beings, all wondering, all questioning, all trying to understand the vast cosmos in which we dwell. Every few decades, humans experience something magical. They look up at the night sky and see something that's not usually there. A bright streak of light, a ghostly tail extending across the sky, a visitor from distant realms. This is a comet, and every comet that visits the inner solar system brings with it a story from the Kuiper Belt, a reminder that the distant and the familiar are not truly separate, but are connected in ways both physical and metaphorical. A comet begins its journey, in most cases, as an object in the Kuiper Belt, a small world of ice and rock that has been orbiting in the cold and darkness for billions of years. Then something changes. Perhaps a passing star exerts a gravitational influence, pulling the object slightly off its usual path. Perhaps a collision with another object sends it tumbling in a new direction. Perhaps the gravitational influence of a distant star or the accumulated effects of the solar wind slowly nudge it inward. Whatever the cause, the object begins to migrate toward the sun, toward warmer regions of space, toward a fate that will change its nature fundamentally. As the comet draws closer to the sun, as it moves from the Kuiper Belt toward the inner solar system, the temperature around it begins to rise. The ices that have been frozen solid for billions of years begin to respond to this warming. Water ice, which has been hard as rock in the Kuiper Belt's extreme cold, begins to sublimate, to transform directly into vapor without passing through a liquid state. The surface begins to outgas, releasing gases that carry along dust particles from the comet's surface. These released materials escape from the comet and form a great cloud around it, a coma. And as the solar wind pushes these gases and dust away from the sun, they form the comet's distinctive tail. Now, the comet is no longer a dark, invisible object hidden in the depths of space. It has become luminous. It has become visible. It has become a message from the Kuiper Belt, written in light and ice and ancient gases, readable to anyone who looks up at the night sky. If you were somehow traveling with this comet as it journeyed inward, you would witness an extraordinary transformation. You would see the surfaces beginning to shine with light reflected from the sun. You would see gases erupting from the surface, creating fountains of material that extend for thousands of kilometers. You would feel the increasingly intense heat of the sun, the increasing strength of its radiation, the increasing violence of its solar wind. The comet would be coming alive, revealing materials and structures that had been hidden since its formation. And then, having reached its closest approach to the sun, the comet would begin its long journey back outward, back toward the cold and darkness, back toward the Kuiper Belt. As it recedes from the sun, the outgassing would slow and eventually cease. The tail would disperse. The comet would gradually fade from visibility. And eventually, it would return to the outer solar system, its surface scarred and changed by its passage through the inner regions, but still recognizably itself, still an object made of ice and rock, still a visitor from the Kuiper Belt. Some comets follow such elongated orbits that they take thousands of years to complete one full revolution around the sun. Others, like Halley's Comet, return on more regular schedules, visiting the inner solar system every century or so. Their arrivals and departures predictable to astronomers. Their lifespans as perceived by human civilization, measured in generations and centuries. Each comet represents a bridge between the familiar and the unfamiliar, between the inner solar system and the Kuiper Belt, between the known and the mysterious. Each comet carries within it a message. You are not isolated from the outer solar system. You are connected to it. The ices that compose you have their origins there. The materials that strike your world may someday come from there. The solar system is one interconnected whole, and the Kuiper Belt is not as separate and distant as it might seem. There's something poetic about comets, something that has captured human imagination since before recorded history. Ancient people saw them and wondered. They seemed to defy the normal rules of the heavens, appearing without warning, moving unpredictably, and then disappearing again. Now we understand their origins, we understand their nature, and yet the sense of wonder remains. They are still visitors, still reminders of vast distances and deep time, still messages from the edge of our cosmic neighborhood. As you contemplate comets in this moment, as you imagine their slow journeys through space, their transformation as they approach the sun, their eventual return to the cold, allow yourself to feel the gentleness in their movement. They are not rushing. They are not frantic or desperate. They are simply following paths determined billions of years ago, returning to the inner solar system as they have returned countless times before, bringing with them the scent and substance of the Kuiper Belt, then retreating once more into the darkness. If you were to live for thousands of years, you might witness several comets. You might come to recognize them as old friends, returning on their regular cycles, as predictable as the seasons, but operating on timescales of centuries and millennia. But you will, in your lifetime, witness only a few. And if you are fortunate enough to see a bright comet in the night sky, you will be seeing a messenger from the Kuiper Belt, a visible proof that the distant realm is not merely theoretical, not merely something read about in books or learned in classrooms, but a real place containing real objects affecting the real universe in ways that can reach your own backyard, your own eyes, your own sense of wonder. As we approach the final part of our journey together through the Kuiper Belt, I want to take you somewhere perhaps even more distant than the physical location of these icy worlds. I want to take you on a journey inward, to the very core of what it means to exist in a universe this vast, this old, this mysterious. Humans are storytellers. It's one of our defining characteristics. We create narratives. We find meaning in patterns. We connect disparate things through the power of metaphor and imagination. And tonight, the story we're exploring together is not just the story of the Kuiper Belt. It's the story of our place in the universe, the story of what it means to be conscious beings looking out at a cosmos that is simultaneously a reflection of our existence and utterly indifferent to it. The Kuiper Belt exists whether humans are here to observe it or not. These icy worlds have orbited the sun for billions of years, and they will continue to orbit for billions of years more, long after human civilization has risen and fallen and disappeared entirely. This is not a depressing thought, though it can seem that way at first. It's actually a liberating thought. It means that meaning is not dependent on being observed. Meaning is not dependent on human approval or human understanding. The universe is inherently meaningful, inherently beautiful, regardless of whether anyone is here to appreciate it. Yet you are here. You are conscious. You are aware. And this awareness is participating in the universe's self-discovery, in some sense. The atoms that make up your body were once in stars. Those stars exploded, and their atoms scattered across space. Some of those atoms eventually came together to form the solar system. Some of them became part of Kuiper Belt objects. And some of them, through the eons, made their way to Earth, incorporated into living organisms, eventually becoming part of you. You are not separate from the Kuiper Belt. You are made of the same material. You are expressing the same laws of physics and chemistry and biology. Think about this deeply. The water in your blood contains hydrogen that was created in the Big Bang itself, that has existed for nearly 14 billion years. The carbon in your cells was created in the cores of stars billions of years ago. The calcium in your bones was created in a supernova explosion. You are, quite literally, made of stardust. You are a temporary arrangement of ancient atoms, atoms that have taken countless forms throughout history, and that will eventually be rearranged into new forms, new expressions, new lives. And somewhere out in the Kuiper Belt, there are objects that contain the same ancient atoms, arranged in different patterns, taking different forms. The ices that coat the surface of Pluto contain atoms that are cousins to the atoms that make up your body. They are traveling on different paths, following different orbits, but they are part of the same cosmic story, the same unfolding narrative of the universe's evolution. This connection, this fundamental unity between yourself and the distant Kuiper Belt, is something you can feel in your bones, something you can sense in the deep patterns of your being. The cosmos is not something outside of you, observing you from a distance. You are part of the cosmos. You are an expression of it. Your consciousness is the universe becoming aware of itself, the cosmos looking inward to understand its own nature. And this awareness, this consciousness, is precious. It is rare. In a universe of vast distances and vast timescales, consciousness seems to be surprisingly uncommon. We do not know of any other conscious beings besides those on Earth. And even on Earth, consciousness manifests only in certain forms, in certain creatures, in certain neural arrangements. That you possess consciousness, that you are able to understand something of the universe's vastness, that you are able to contemplate the Kuiper Belt and the cosmos beyond it, is a remarkable thing. Let this sink in as you drift deeper towards sleep. You are not insignificant. Smallness and insignificance are not the same thing. Yes, you are small compared to the universe. Yes, your lifetime is brief compared to the age of the cosmos. But your consciousness, your ability to think and feel and understand and wonder, is not insignificant. It is precisely what makes you part of the universe's meaning-making process. You are here to witness. You are here to understand. You are here to create stories about the cosmos, and in doing so, to help the cosmos understand itself. The Kuiper Belt is waiting for you to think about it. These distant icy worlds have been orbiting in silence for billions of years. And now, in this moment, a conscious being has directed attention toward them. The universe is being seen. The universe is being known. This is not a minor thing. This is the very process through which the universe comes to know itself. We have traveled far together. You and I, we have drifted outward from the sun, past the familiar planets, out to the edge of the gravitational influence of our star, into a realm of ancient ices and silent orbits. We have learned about the objects that dwell there, the histories that shape them, the mysteries that still surround them. We have connected the Kuiper Belt to ourselves, recognizing in those distant worlds a reflection of our own cosmic origin, a reminder of the elements that compose us. And now, as our journey draws to its natural conclusion, I want to invite you to settle even more deeply into relaxation, to allow your mind to release its grip on wakefulness, to let consciousness begin to slip gently into the realm of sleep and dreams. You have done the work of listening, of understanding, of imagining. Now you can simply be. Imagine that you are not viewing the Kuiper Belt from a distance anymore, but that you have become part of it. You are an object orbiting the sun, one of countless others, following a path determined by gravity and ancient history. You are very small, so very small that you would never be noticed, never be catalogued, never have a name. But you exist. You orbit. You move through space in perfect harmony with all the other objects around you. And all around you, stretching in every direction, are other orbiting bodies. They are not crowded space, remains fundamentally vast, with enormous distances between objects. But they are there, each one following its own path, each one bound to the sun by gravity, each one participating in the eternal dance of the solar system. Your orbit is very long. It takes centuries for you to complete one full revolution around the sun. In that time, you will watch the sun's position change in your sky, from zenith to horizon and back again. You will experience the slow turning of the seasons, seasons that last for decades. You will be part of something larger than yourself, something that has existed for billions of years and will likely exist for billions more. And as you orbit, you are not entirely alone. Other objects are orbiting nearby, not close enough to collide, but close enough that you can sense their presence, that you know they are there, sharing this vast realm with you. Sometimes, if you could somehow perceive gravitational fields directly, you would feel the gentle tug of these nearby objects, the infinitesimal perturbations they create in space and time. But mostly, you would feel only the pull of the sun, the primary force that determines your motion, that keeps you in your orbit, that gives your existence meaning and shape. This is the experience of the Kuiper Belt, the quiet inner life of that distant region. Not violent or chaotic, but patient and eternal, orderly and peaceful. Objects following their orbits, participating in the same cosmic rhythm that has governed motion since the very beginning of the universe. And as you imagine this, as you feel yourself becoming part of this eternal dance, allow your breathing to slow even more. You are drifting now, not through space, but through the boundary between wakefulness and sleep. The weight of your body on the bed beneath you is becoming more noticeable, more present. Your body is heavy with relaxation. Your mind is floating, untethered, drifting like a Kuiper Belt object through the darkness. The Kuiper Belt will be there tomorrow. It will be there next week, next year, centuries, and millennia from now. The orbits are stable. The dance is eternal. And you are safe here, held in the same gravity that holds the Kuiper Belt, connected to everything, isolated from nothing. Let your thoughts become quieter now. You don't need to understand everything about the universe. You don't need to solve all its mysteries. You can simply be present to them, and simply exist alongside them, and simply know that they are there, waiting, vast, beautiful, incomprehensibly larger than yourself, but also fundamentally connected to you through the bonds of matter and energy and the laws of physics. The last thing I want you to know, as you drift down into sleep, as your consciousness begins to dissolve into the realm of dreams, is this: you matter. Not in the sense of importance or significance in the grand scheme of the universe, but in the literal, physical sense. You are made of matter. You are made of atoms that have been traveling for billions of years, that have taken countless forms, that will take countless more forms in the future. You are the universe expressing itself in a temporary arrangement, a brief pattern, a story that the cosmos is telling about itself. The Kuiper Belt is also the universe expressing itself, also a story, also part of the infinite conversation that matter and energy are constantly having with themselves throughout all of space and all of time. And you and the Kuiper Belt are part of the same story. You are characters in the same narrative. You are both playing your roles in the grand drama of existence. So rest now. Let sleep come gently, naturally, without resistance. You have traveled far enough for one night. The universe will still be here when you wake, unchanged, eternal, waiting. And the Kuiper Belt, billions of kilometers away, orbits on, indifferent to human time, patient in its ancient dance. Your eyes are heavy now. Your body is completely relaxed. The boundary between your consciousness and unconsciousness is dissolving. Let it dissolve. Let yourself fall gently into sleep, held by the gravity of the universe, carried by the same forces that govern the motion of stars and planets and distant icy worlds. The Kuiper Belt whispers in the darkness. It has no voice, but if it did, it would tell you of the billions of years it has existed, of the countless transformations it has witnessed, of the strange and beautiful objects that call it home. It would tell you that you are welcome, that you are part of it, that everything in the universe is connected to everything else. And now, as your consciousness fades, as sleep comes more deeply with each breath, allow yourself to sink into that connection, to rest in the embrace of cosmic unity, to dream dreams that the Kuiper Belt has been dreaming since the beginning of time. Sleep now. The universe is watching over you. The gravity that holds the Kuiper Belt also holds you. Rest easy. All is well. All has always been well. All will always be well.